Hey everyone, welcome to Curveball. I am so excited for this week's guest, Claire Ketchum. She, her story is one of many winding paths. Okay, so you know that thing where you finally crack the code on something only to have life flip the table on you? That was Claire with mindful eating. After 20 plus years of yo-yo dieting, girl, I understand. She found food freedom, like literally. And she's, oh my gosh, this is like this huge eureka moment. I think I have found the answer to all things. And then boom, 9 months later, your daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Now, I did check. Her daughter is doing just great. But suddenly mindful eating wasn't an option. It felt like a privilege to you. So you went in like any good mom is going to do. You're going to go into full-blown problem-solving mode, which led her to become a health coach, which is super cool. But when her eating habits started spiraling again, she realized the real culprit wasn't food, it was stress. I think this is so interesting. Enter the chronic stress loop. This is our brains, all of our brains, sneaky way of making willpower totally useless. I love this concept because a lot of people think willpower is the answer. And I've heard so much about, no, it's not really, but I don't know. I can't wait to learn more. Now, Claire is on a mission to help teens, which I love also, build confidence and a healthy relationship with food before they get stuck in the extremely exhausting cycle of like weight gain, body image. I can't even imagine what it must be like now with social media. And the fun fact is she literally lives on a middle school campus, like right in the middle of a boarding school. So she is in the trenches. Claire, welcome to Curveball. Thank you so much for saying yes to being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
So I want to start with that moment, like when you're mindful diet, like I know what it's like when you find like you have something that really works for you, you're losing weight, you're feeling great. But like you said that stopped working. So what was happening? And then just give me a sort of a day in the life of what was happening and then what you did from that point.
Sure. So before my daughter was diagnosed, I had sort of been working on mindful eating, and I had been doing it. I always forget because it was a while ago, but I think it was at least a year and a half that I had been eating mindfully on my own and really enjoying it and loving not being on this restrictive diet anymore. I had been trying to do Weight Watchers. I've been trying to go back on Weight Watchers
Right.
for 5 years and never being able to do it.
I have done the Weight Watchers. Do they still do the point system? Because I did it after both my kids and I thought it was the best because you eat real food. Like you're not eating like someone else's food, like pre-portioned for you.
Correct. And I had loved it. I had also done it where I had my daughter and I had loved it and it worked really well for me. And then every time I tried to do it again, I just couldn't do it. And so when I was able to eat mindfully and maintain my weight, it was just so exciting because I could really eat whatever I wanted as long as I paid attention to what I was eating. And so it just felt so liberating.
Yeah. So tell me, I think I might know what mindful eating is, but it's probably one of those things that I just have this assumption of what it is. But what is it really? And what changed for you?
The basic concept of mindful eating is that you eat when you're hungry in a calm environment. So instead of lots of people will walk around when they're eating or they eat in front of a desk and they're not paying, or they'll watch a show while they're eating, or they're driving and they're eating. So they're not really paying attention to what they're doing. Mm. And so when you start a mindful eating practice, you commit to sitting down, putting food on a plate, and chewing slowly and really paying attention to how much food you're eating. And you also wait to eat until you're actually hungry versus just sort of automatically eating breakfast because it's breakfast time and lunch because it's lunchtime and it's 3 o'clock, so I have a snack. So it's just really tuning into your body's signals about when you're hungry and when you're full. But if you don't even know that you're hungry when you start, then how could you possibly know when you need to stop eating?
Right. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I remember hearing an interview with Deepak Chopra, and he said because I guess he was an oncologist before that was his medical practice. Mm-hmm. And so he said one of the things that he was really shocked at when he moved to America was just how quickly people eat. They'll literally take their next bite of food almost like automatically when they're still swallowing. And I just remember this. Wait until you literally feel your food hit your stomach and then take the next bite. And that would be like a way of mindful eating.
Yes. And there's lots of different strategies that you could implement. So like when I work with people to teach them, like there are lots of different things, like you could eat with your left hand. That will automatically, if you're right-handed.
Yeah, right.
Automatically slows you down.
Or left. Yes.
Or, I don't know, put your sandwich down in between don't hold your food while you're eating. Like
Mm.
little things like that. Sometimes it's easier to just say, I'm going to take a small portion to start, and then I'm going to wait 10 minutes to see how that settles with me before I get seconds. So there's
Right.
lots of different ways you can do it. But I thought when I first learned about it, I thought it was going to be really easy to eat mindfully. And it was actually felt like torture. Like it felt horrible to sit there and just eat. I felt really uncomfortable. I was like, it made me almost feel anxious. So it really seems, oh, okay, well, that's no big deal. You just did it. But it's when you're used to just eating on the go and eating really quickly,
Right.
it feels really different to sit down and actually pay attention to your eat. Now, I was fine. Like I did that with my family at night. We would eat dinner together, and I
Right.
definitely totally then. But it was more like when I was eating by myself.
Right.
They were often like, oh, well, I'll just go watch a show while I'm eating, or I would sort of walk around the kitchen and grab bites. If I wouldn't necessarily sit down and eat, and I never paid attention to whether I was hungry or not. That was and so when I started to get good at it, it was great because I was
Yes.
eating the right amount of food for my body without having to worry about what I was actually eating. And I was able to just maintain my weight, and all that stress and worry about, well, if I eat this now, then I'm not going to be able to eat this later. It was like, no, you eat this now until you're full. And then if you're hungry later, you can eat again. And
Right.
it's
Well,
okay.
it just like our bodies are so perfect in so many ways. And when you can just like work with the way that your body really works, like I just know I have ADHD, and I realized and I was diagnosed really 2.5 years ago. So I went my
Okay.
whole life just wondering what's wrong with me, like all
Yeah.
these different things. And I know now, like now that I work with my brain, I don't even really need medication, but I work with my brain as opposed to against it. We work with our body. Like we have this beautiful thing called hunger, right? And it's so interesting because my kids are always, because I don't know, I hate eating breakfast. And I saw this nutritionist, and she was like, you have to eat breakfast. And I'm like, okay. And I really tried, but I would literally, my body would be like, I couldn't even eat it. And so then I just thought, you know what? I can't just eat 3 squares because someone's eat 3 squares and 2 snacks. I'm really only going to eat when I'm hungry. And so sometimes I guess like I'm sort of a natural intermittent faster because I really do not get hungry until like early afternoon. But that just works for me. So I'm not,
Yeah. And when you get stuck in diet culture, you are
oh,
looking outside of yourself for the answers versus inside. You went against what felt good for your body because somebody was telling you have to do it this way versus listening to what your body was telling you what feels good for you. Right.
right. Well, I know people who take Ozempic, right? And so I've talked to a couple people who have I know that they have disordered eating. And what's
Mhm.
so interesting to me is, and I think Ozempic like activates whatever that hormone is that says we're done, right? But what they said is like there's food noise, like and their relationship with food is different than I would think. Like they're like, you look at something like a big plate of something and you're just like, oh my God, I'm only going to be able to eat like a third of that. And they're like, it doesn't even matter if I'm hungry or not. I'm going to eat that whole thing, And so, and
And there are ways and there are psychological and spiritual reasons why we have
mm,
that relationship with food. And so that is part of my program, which is the peaceful eating method, which is my program that I often work with adults versus teens. So more like if a mom wanted to sort of heal her relationship with food and sort of be a role model for their children, that is
right,
that program. So that is a huge part of figuring out why you have that desire to eat beyond your fullness. So that's where the mindful eating wasn't enough when
right,
my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and I was in this like very stressful period of time. And as you had explained in the introduction, you have something happens, and it doesn't have to be something as dramatic as a child being diagnosed with a lifelong chronic disease. But if you have some stressors in your life, that stress activates that inner critic, which is like, why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? You're such a loser. And you
right.
start bombarding yourself with these thoughts about whatever happens. So it's like when my daughter was diagnosed, like, why didn't I know it? Why didn't I figure it out? What's wrong with me? I'm a horrible mother, right?
Well,
Like,
and then you wrote in your submission too, like you were absolutely terrified that she was going to go into diabetic shock when she was asleep and die in her sleep. And how old? She was
yeah,
9 when
she's
this
not.
was.
Yes.
I cannot even imagine the number of times where I was afraid my kids were going to die in their sleep is like not too many, but where I was legit like one night my son went down to bed like at 5:30 at night and I'm like, "Oh no." And I just kept on going in and checking in on him because it was so unusual. So I
Right.
can totally relate to that. Like you just must have that constant, it has to be like carrying a little, like a 10-pound brick around with you everywhere. Like you can do it, but you feel it.
Right. And so when you have that stress, your body's natural desire is to get back to a relaxed state because you can't be healthy and fight off diseases and digest food properly and function properly if you're always in a chronic stress. If your stress is elevated, like your body isn't working properly. So its primary goal is to always get you back into a relaxed state as quickly as possible. So if your go-to way to do that is to eat food, then you're going to do it no matter what. So if
Or
you
drink or smoke weed or engage in other like just numbing behaviors, right?
whatever yours is. So
That is, wait, hold on a second. Like, this is blowing my mind because I know that the body's all about homeostasis, but I've never talked about someone with homeostasis around stress. So that our natural inclination is to, if we're high stress, our natural inclination is to figure we got to get homeostasis. So then your body's going to start doing things to get there. Oh my God. I hope I'm just like, what? Does everybody know this? Like, I'm just like, wait, how am I today's years old? But I've never heard of that correlation of homeostasis relative to what I would consider to be a feeling, but is really a physical, like stress is a physical and emotional response. Probably, or is stress really physical with emotional implications? Am I not even understanding stress correctly?
Well, you could have different types of stress, right? So you could have just daily things like someone cuts you off in traffic, or your coworker says something rude to you, or you're carrying
Right.
something in the refrigerator and you drop sauce all over the ground, and then you got to pick it up. Then you're late, and so those kinds of daily stress, right?
Yes.
Like just annoying.
You're doing your protein shake and you're shaking it and the lid is not on it and you throw the whole thing in your face and then the rest of it
And
across
you're
your
like,
whole
okay,
kitchen. Yeah,
whatever.
I've had that happen. Yes.
Minor things, but that can just sort of increase your stress, right? And so then as other
Yes.
things happen, like you're less likely to respond in a way that's going to, it's like ticking up, right? So that's how you
Right.
start your day, and you don't have strategies to reduce it, then you just keeps on getting higher and higher. So it's not like something like that happens and you automatically like shove a cookie in your mouth, but as the day goes on, you only have a certain amount of willpower reserves. So
Right.
your decision to not eat something, you're going to have you have to make that decision all day long if you're in this stress state. And so as stress escalates, it just sort of chips away at your willpower until it's sort of depleted. That's why people have a much harder time at the end of the day, is because their willpower gets depleted by the end of the day.
Oh my gosh. So it's every time you think about it, it's like you have a punch card and you have not like you have an unlimited amount of punches, but you just got to think about if you were just taking punches, right? I can see that. Like I never really understood when people said willpower doesn't work, but now I understand that if you're in a stress state, it's something. So it sounds like when you're in a peaceful state, you make the decision like I'm not a, like, I know that there are really powerful cues with language too. Now, oh, I can't have that cookie versus I'm just not a cookie eater. There are sort of differences, but like in a stress state, you would have to keep on saying, oh my gosh. And especially if one of your responses is to like maybe medicate with food, like food makes you feel better.
Correct. So
Yeah.
if your go-to way to soothe stress is to eat, then so your subconscious mind is going to start sending you these signals like, how about you have a cookie? That cookie looks really good. Oh, you've been so good. You just start your diet again tomorrow. Like you have all these justifications about why you don't need to do what you want to do already pre-programmed into your subconscious mind, so that if your body feels like it's on edge and it needs that release, it's going to start sending you those messages. So you can get sort of two different types of messages from your subconscious mind, and you don't
Right.
even know that they're happening.
Yes. Like
And
I'm going to have so much more awareness because I've said all of those things to myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you use food to soothe your stress, and I didn't know I was doing that, I just and because I was in a stress response probably for 9 years with my daughter. I was just
Right.
always stressed. And so when I
Oh my God, your little adrenal system must have
yeah,
just
so
been
when I
like, oh,
figured this out and I started putting practices into place to have other ways to reduce stress
right,
and all the other strategies that I could talk about later, because reducing stress is just one piece of it.
right,
But then all of a sudden I had another strategy. Okay, like I'm in this stress response. I want to shove a box of candy down my face. What's going on? I can sort of figure out what that was, and then I could reduce that stress versus eating candy, which is really just going to make me more stressed out because now I'm gaining weight. I don't feel well because I just ate a whole box of candy and it tastes good and it does reduce my stress in the moment, but it
right,
makes me feel sick. And then I'm mad at myself for doing it. And then the stress escalates. And then that just becomes another stressor that you can't
right,
do. And you just keep on going around and around. That's where mindful eating just was like, it didn't matter. That's what I wanted to do because I was in this constant stress state. And not everybody is always in a constant stress state. Sometimes it's you could have like maybe you're feeling sad about something, maybe you're feeling rejected, or maybe you're feeling lonely, or maybe you're feeling bored. And that's what triggers your sort of stress
right.
response because you just feel uncomfortable and you don't want to feel uncomfortable anymore. So you want to solve it, and your go-to way to solve it is to eat. And or maybe you're having a big stressor like a diagnosis, a divorce, a move. Even if it's something positive, it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't cause stress in your
I
life.
know, but I will tell you, like everyone who gets divorced, like I told my husband, I said, if you could just leave me like really convincingly for 2 months, let me go on that divorce diet. I'll be so skinny. Then come back to me. It'll be perfect.
Well, that's so interesting because that is probably a reaction to how you respond to food. So if when you feel really stressed, you choose not to eat, that would be your reaction. But
Right.
which some people do.
Yeah.
Like they feel stressed and they lose their appetite and it's like the other way. But if you know that when your life is stressful that you eat food, then the likelihood of that
Right.
how you react towards would probably be low.
So I know that is, oh my gosh, like you're sort of blowing my mind just around, just sort of, there is sort of like this diet, I think diet culture. And even though I consider myself not to be like in necessarily in that diet culture, I'm definitely super body aware. Like I go to yoga and I compare myself and I'm like, Heather Campbell, you cannot be comparing yourself against these like 24-year-old girls in yoga. You're almost a 60-year-old woman. But I just think it's the compare. I just think I had a professor in advertising school in the 80s. And I
Mhm.
remember she was writing her thesis on the correlation between anorexia and supermodels. So that's when supermodels became super big. And I can't help but think like how ahead of her time she was really thinking about that. Like and you work with teens. So what are some things that people, I was, I have a sister, I have lots of sisters, but I have one and she had an eating disorder, had disordered eating, I should say. And I just know you can go from zero. And then I had a roommate in college who went from like zero to eating disorder so quickly. So how do you create healthy food habits for kids without triggering an eating disorder? And now I'm just going to level the playing field because I'm assuming boys and like I always feel like we think so much about body image around girls too. And men, like all you have to do is look at the mannequins like in Target. And in Target, there are going to be thin models and plus size models. All fashion magazines for women are going to have thin, medium, and plus size models now, men one size. And I'm like, oh, are we trying to get men into eating disorders? But I feel like men get very much ignored when we talk about food and body image and food disorders and things like that too. And I'm assuming the playing field is probably very level with children now. More
I've actually worked with more teen boys than teen girls,
get out.
which is really interesting. And my husband always, and even when I was a teacher, because I taught one on one when I taught students to learn, I always had more boys than girls. And I don't. You just work well with boys. And I was like, well, I don't care. I said they might if you are not at a weight that makes you feel confident. If you were like, it doesn't matter what like what you weigh. It's
Right.
just, you could be 5 pounds more than you want to weigh. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, then you're going to want to change it. And you could actually not be overweight at all, but dieting is a socially acceptable way to deal with uncomfortable emotions. So lots of people start dieting and they don't even know why they're doing it. When I work with teens, I first of all obviously explain this whole chronic stress loop process so that they understand the root cause of their desire to want to lose weight or change themselves, right? And because sometimes it has nothing to do with actually wanting to lose weight. The ones who I actually work with are a little bit overweight and they actually want to lose weight, because if a teen isn't overweight, they're not seeking out help and support. They might be talking about it with their friends or something like that. But when they understand that is at the root of their desire, and I actually had never thought of, just to speak to your point of eating disorders, I never really thought of an eating disorder as just being the opposite side of the coin, is that when you feel uncomfortable and when your life feels out of control, instead of eating, you choose not to eat to get that control.
Right.
And so I was listening to a podcast, and someone who had just discovered at a very late age, like in her 40s, that she was anorexic. She didn't think she was. And she was diagnosed with anorexia. And she just thought this was how you lived. Like she just, you just restricted when you felt uncomfortable or life felt too much. She would restrict. And that was the way of gaining control. And I had never thought of it just being the opposite. Like I feel out of control, and the way that brings me back and reduces that stress is to eat. For her, it was to not eat. So that was just really interesting to think of it in that way. So either way, if you are teaching your teens these 5 essential habits, then they have the foundation to go into adulthood where they know how to keep their body out of the chronic stress loop.
So what are the 5 essential habits? Can we get the scoop on those? Perfect. Yeah. What are they?
Okay. So the first one we've been talking a little bit about, so that's increasing stress resilience. So when you have some sort of a stressor in your life, and this could be something as small as you saying hi to someone in the hallway and they looking the other way and pretending they didn't hear you.
Right.
Having a text ignored, getting a bad grade on a test when you thought you studied really hard and did well, whatever. Right. It could be something small, or it could be something like the friend you've been friends with since second grade all says hi that she's never speaking to you again. It's like heart-wrenching and devastating. Like you could go like really far in between. It doesn't really matter. You have to have ability to regulate your nervous system when things like that happen. So I liked to have teenagers sort of develop a strategy so in those quick little moments where you feel stress pop up, you have a way to regulate your system in the moment. And that could be something like a breathing technique, somatic movements, things like that. Things are so easy that you can do in the moment. Nobody knows you're doing it, things like that. Then if a teen is willing, and that's always a caveat, not all teens are willing, to have sort of a deeper practice where they are maybe doing journaling or tapping, or if it feels appropriate for your teen, for them to be working with somebody, working through their stressors. That's a lot of what I do with my teens is we actually start every single coaching session talking about the stressors in their life and coming up with strategies to help them deal with those. So that's the first piece, is the stress resilient. The second piece is creating a balanced nutrition. So I don't spend a whole lot of time telling teens what to eat and not to eat. We do small little micro habits. So I'm drinking 5 Diet Cokes a day. Let's bring those down to 2. And so we'll just start with something really simple, or I don't eat any vegetables. Like, how about you eat a salad with dinner 3 nights a week?
Right.
You do that for me?
Yeah.
I'll try. And so try to decrease the things that they're eating a ton of and increase the things that they should be eating that, make you healthy, and finding a balance between what works for them. It really depends on, as you were saying earlier, do they like to eat breakfast? Do they not like to eat breakfast? I never tell a teenager what they should or should not be doing. We just have a conversation about what they're doing, what feels good. I'm teaching them to tune into what works for them.
Right.
And if you don't like broccoli, then it probably doesn't agree with you at some level. Listen to your body. That's like most teens who hate something, they have I hated milk, and I was forced to drink milk every night.
Same.
And
I hated milk. And then they used to hand it out like in the grade schools, and it would come in these like horrible paper cartons. It was just freezing. I mean, it was just lukewarm, room temperature.
yeah.
And I just hated it. And I was, yes, I'm with you.
And
I love that. Well,
and I don't do well with dairy. And it's like my body knew. So I help sort of teens tune into that and in a very low pressure way, just get them to like ease their way into just having a little bit of a nutrition and never saying your decision today doesn't have to be your decision tomorrow. So you might decide, I'm just eating a lot of pizza. Like I just felt like I went out for dinner. Like I had pizza 3 nights last week. That's crazy. I'm not going to do that. I would like to get down to once. Right. Or whatever it is. And then maybe they have a crazy week. It's exam week. And they're like, whatever, I'm going to eat pizza every night.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So it's just like, you can ebb and flow, like your decision, like this week, it might make sense for you to do next week. And it can always be changing and evolving as long as you're paying attention. So that's really helping teens figure out that balanced nutrition piece.
So what is the third healthy habit shift?
So the third one is increasing peace and joy. So this is sort of a 2-part one, but I put in the same category because they're sort of both the same. So these are the things that we have in our life that help us stay out of the chronic stress loop that don't actually have anything to do with reducing stress. So we do like in a roundabout way. So increasing peace would be having things in your life that you really enjoy that make your life enjoyable, right? So
yes.
You love to read, so you're part of a book club. Maybe you play sports. Maybe you do after school activities. Maybe you do photography, things like that. I'm sorry, that's joy. So those would be things that add joy to your life. So those are all of the things that you really like to do, and making sure you have some of those in your life. So the are just full of things that you actually like to do. And then the peace part is things that aren't necessarily going to bring you joy, but they make you feel calmer.
Yes.
So that would be things like getting enough sleep, maybe not snoozing in the morning, things like that, or having good study habits. Because when teens don't have good study habits, that can really increase their stress and they feel organized. Sometimes cleaning and organizing their space or cleaning out their backpack can make them feel a lot calmer.
Yes.
Things like that. So I spent a lot of time as a teacher cleaning out my kids' backpacks.
Yes.
And organizing them. And they're like, oh, thank gosh. Thank you so much, Mrs. Ketchum. Yeah. Like, it's not something they would ever ask you to do. Or really think to, especially if that's not their thing. I love to look at stuff. But they do feel better and more at ease when they have a system. And then deciding what their system is. Just those are examples of things that can bring you peace. So you want to have things that make your life run more smoothly. And you want to have things that add joy to your life. So that's the third sort of category.
Sure.
And the fourth one is to increase self-trust. So this is a little bit what we were talking about with the Balanced Body Blueprint, where you are actually deciding what you like and what you don't like, and you're not just going with the flow of what everybody else, or even maybe what your mom or dad likes. Like, you are deciding for yourself what you like. So maybe you like to stay up late and get up later, and maybe you like to go to bed early, and you don't know because you've had a bedtime your whole life. And so a lot of what teens do is when their parents sort of stop telling them what time to go to bed, they just stay up late because they can.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? They're just like, oh, well, I can stay up late, so I'm going to, versus really deciding for themselves, wow, I have a much better day when I go to bed at 8:30.
Right.
It's like, I'm staying up till 10 because I can't. So it's just trusting that they're paying attention to what they like. Same thing with like friendships, right? So maybe a lot of people glorify having a lot of friends or having a big friend group or being invited to big parties. And maybe that's not your thing. And you don't need to feel bad about it. You just, you know what? I have a really good best friend. And I have a couple of acquaintances and groups I'm in, and that makes me feel happy. And I don't need to worry about the fact that I'm not invited to these parties just because I feel like I should want to be invited to those parties. And so trusting that you know what you want is a huge part of growing into a person who's not stressed out all the time.
Don't you think if you knew even the concept of self-trust, or someone even made you aware of that when you were in your 20s? How different, like, I just think about how different my whole life would have been. Like, it
Yes.
would have been just so transformative. Okay, so what's number 5?
So number 5 is to increase the positive self-talk. So we talk
Yes.
in that those sabotaging thoughts, that inner critic, that just all these thoughts that sort of you have subconsciously, it's something like 95% of the thoughts we have are negative and repetitive. So we have the same thoughts over and over again. And if you have them enough, then they become a belief. And then it's really hard to think of yourself in any other way if
Right.
becomes a belief. So if you can sort of stop those thoughts and reprogram them so that you're having thoughts that are actually helping you achieve the goals that you want to achieve,
Right.
you are more likely, well, first of all, it helps you stay out of that chronic stress loop. If
Yes.
you have thoughts that are helping you work towards your goals, for example, like if you didn't do well on a test, right? Instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm such a loser. What's wrong with me? Everybody else did fine. I failed. Like I'm obviously an idiot. Whatever thoughts start you bar.
Right.
Hey, well, was there something that I could have done differently? What could I do moving forward? And you just have
Right.
an honest conversation with yourself. Every time I don't do well, I can work towards what I want to do next time. And so
Right.
versus beating yourself up, which is just going to drive you towards the food if that's
Yes.
the mechanism.
Right.
It's okay, well, what's a productive thing that I can do because I didn't do well on this test?
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of
Yes.
kids won't advocate for themselves. And so that is a skill that you can teach your teenagers is to be an advocate and say, I really didn't do well on this test. I don't understand what I did wrong. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe they didn't study for the test, or maybe they don't
Right.
know how to study for a test. So maybe they need to learn how to study. And sometimes working with a tutor can help that. Like there's
Right.
lots of different avenues you could go down.
What I love about your whole methodology is, first of all, it's very easy to understand. There, and really only one of the 4 is around food. And it's sort of not even, it's just sort of like, just be balanced. But really what it all comes down to is awareness. And I don't know if I read this somewhere, if I made up this quote, but if I made it up, it's really good. Awareness is the only, that's why I'm like, it's so good. I doubt I made it up. But awareness is the only prerequisite for accomplishment,
Yeah.
even before willingness, because you have to be aware and then willing is sort of the second coming right behind it. So Claire Ketchum, if people want to learn more about, well, how to get out of the chronic stress loop or about the balanced body blueprint, is that what it's called?
That
Yes.
is
Yeah.
yes.
How do they get in touch with you? Where can they find you? And we'll also include all this in the show notes, people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have on my website, I have a link to the Balanced Body Blueprint. And so that explains this chronic stress loop in a little bit more detail, explains the 5 types of habits, and then sort of gives you an outline about how to start creating this with your teens. You can download it for free, sort of start building this blueprint with your teen, and explains you how to do that in
Right.
a way that does not decrease their stress. Because if you are throwing all this stuff at your teen at once, it's going to overwhelm them and it's not going to work.
Well, and
So
what a great opportunity for you then, because I mean, my kids are grown now, but I've learned so much. I know I'm going to be different about how I think about, well, pretty much everything now, and especially how I eat. And so I think it's also amazing that you can model that same behavior for your children. That's beautiful.
100%. So that blueprint, you could work on that with your teen. And if you were interested in getting your teen support, I do have a coaching program that I do with the teens.
Amazing.
Also fine. And then if you want support as a mom, that's
Yes.
the eating method. And then I'm also on Instagram. So my website is claireketchum.com. And then I'm on Instagram and I share examples of healthy habit shifts in all 5 categories on my Instagram account. So if you want just some
Amazing.
more ideas that are the blueprint, that's a great place to check.
And what's your Instagram? What's your handle on Instagram?
It is claireketchum.ck.
Awesome. Thank you so much for blowing my mind
So
completely about the stress homeostasis. Like, I can't wait to tell so many people about this. Like, I've become like, after I started Curveball, I've become like 50% more interesting at dinner parties because I'm like, oh my gosh, guess who I interviewed? But you really have completely you really have shifted this whole idea of the stress homeostasis and then what we do and why that pull is so strong because your body we got to get back there, right? So,
100%.
yes.
And everyone blames themselves. And it's just how you were conditioned. And it's just
Yes.
habits that you created, likely when you were a teenager, that you're just continuing on into adulthood automatically.
Oh my God. And I just think about, I was a teenager in the 80s. So just how awful, like just, ugh. just starvation city. Like I remember that was like the vogue. And I was always just, I like food too much. I really
No,
did.
I was never. I honestly remember the thought going through my mind that I could I wish I had the willpower to be anorexic, because like I remember I was like, what a mess up thing to even think about. But I remember that was the model, like these like basically anorexic model. Was it Kate Moss that when we were
yes.
anorexic?
Yes.
And so I was like, I could never do it. I just don't know.
It's why that's Kate Moss is the whole reason I even know there's something called thigh gap. I never even knew it. Alrighty, dear. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing work. And I love the way that you're working with teens. I think this is so important.
Thank you so much for having me.